Our topic is integral ecology, which is presented in the encyclical Laudato Si. More recently, Pope Francis has published Fratelli Tutti on social friendship and fraternity or brotherhood. And although this has a specifically social and human focus, it is very consistent with and a continuation of Laudato Si. And during this presentation, I will refer to areas where Fratelli Tutti continues what has been said in Laudato Si. In chapter 1 of Laudato Si, Pope Francis sets the scene, so to speak. He sets out the ecological crisis that is facing our world, which he refers to as our common home. And the causes of this crisis are, we are told, profoundly human. It is due to mankind's irresponsible use and abuse of the Earth's resources. As a result, we are told, the Earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. She groans in travail. Then in paragraph 11 we read, if we approach nature and the environment without openness to awe and wonder, our attitude will be that of masters, consumers, ruthless exploiters, unable to set limits on their immediate needs. Then, most of this chapter goes on to show that it is indeed this attitude of overconsumption, exploitation, and even the plundering of our common home that is dominant in our world today, and which has led to what the encyclical calls an ecological crisis. The ecological crisis threatening our common home is described under 6 headings. The first is pollution, what the text refers to as the reduction of our world to a pile of filth. It is also critical of waste and our throwaway culture. Climate change. This is identified as one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day. And it also defines threats to the environment, including access to safe drinkable water. And this is described as a basic and universal human right. And the depletion of biodiversity. Each year sees the disappearance of thousands of plant and animal species. The 5th heading is the breakdown of society. Current models of development and the throwaway culture adversely affect the quality of life and are causing social breakdown, increased violence, and a rise in new forms of social aggression. And chapter 1 closes by focusing on global inequality. And this is an issue that is also addressed in Fratelli Tutti. We are told that more than anybody else, environmental problems affect the most vulnerable and the poor, who do not cause them. It is the wealthy, mostly those who live in the Northern Hemisphere, who cause the problems. This is one of the great injustices of the environmental crisis. Pope Francis says that a new approach is needed. There must be change. Today, however, we have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. In chapter 2, faith and caring for creation are clearly linked. Christians in their turn realize that their responsibility within creation and their duty towards nature and the Creator are an essential part of faith. Caring for creation is part of faith. It is essential to living faith. And this chapter also asserts that human life is grounded in our relationships with God, neighbour, and with the created world. Paragraph 66. In defining the right relationship between mankind and nature, Laudato Si rejects the idea that being made in God's image and given dominion over the earth means a limitless right to use it as we wish, or to have absolute domination over other creatures. Instead, Laudato Si asserts a relationship of mutual responsibility between human beings and nature. Each community can take from the bounty of the earth whatever it needs for subsistence, but it also has a duty to protect the earth and to ensure its fruitfulness for coming generations. Chapter 2 then goes on to say that peace, justice, and the preservation of creation are three absolutely interconnected themes which cannot be separated and treated individually. Everything is related. And this idea that everything is related and interconnected is repeated many times in Laudato Si. The last paragraph in chapter 2 emphasizes that the natural environment is a collective good, the patrimony of all humanity, and the responsibility of everyone. Therefore, it is not something for us to plunder or to use up as we want. Instead, it is something we must use wisely, and that we are all responsible for. Our environment is a common good. In chapter 3, the human origins and causes of the ecological crisis are explored. One of the areas focused on is what the encyclical calls the dominant technocratic paradigm. This model, the encyclical says, can be defined as a distorted worldview that sees science, technology, and financial growth as the means of solving all the world's problems, be they environmental or social. Laudato Si is very clear in its rejection of this view. The text says, it is based on the lie that there is an infinite supply of the earth's goods. Erroneously, this view also accepts the idea of infinite or unlimited economic growth. And it also accepts every advance in technology with a view to profit, without concern for its potentially negative impact on human beings. Laudato Si rejects all of these assertions because they see the earth and its resources as things to be plundered at will, not caring for the poor, future generations, or the environment. It rejects them because this worldview fails to respect the intrinsic dignity of nature and humanity, and fails to recognize that everything is connected and everything is interdependent. Ultimately, we are told, this technocratic worldview not only risks damaging nature and humanity, but also encourages exploitation and inequality. The technocratic model or worldview promotes a situation where all is subservient to the needs of the few, to the wealthy and powerful, who see the resources of the earth as being goods for their use, exploitation, and as a source of profit to be gained. Laudato Si is very clear that this worldview is incapable of addressing the root causes of the ecological crisis. Instead, Laudato Si recognizes that the interconnectedness of the crisis we now face demands a new way of seeing, thinking, and acting. So let's just step back for a minute. Up to now, Laudato Si has done two things. First, it has seen and described the crisis our world is facing: pollution, climate change, social breakdown, inequality, and the breakdown of biodiversity. Second, it has analysed or judged the situation and found that the predominant technocratic model, which the encyclical tells us dominates economic and political life, cannot address the root causes of the threat that our common home is facing. The remaining chapters of Laudato Si focus on action to address or deal with the crisis. Chapter 4 opens by saying that today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis. And this vision is integral ecology. Laudato Si proposes integral ecology as a new paradigm or a new model for justice. It is a way that is very different from the disconnected and destructive technocratic paradigm that dominates the political and economics of our day. Integral ecology is a new lens through which we can view, see more clearly, and so understand our world and the problems it faces. Paragraph 139 of Laudato Si says, "We are faced not with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for a solution demand an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, and at the same time protecting nature." This integrated view reveals a deeper insight. Not only are the ecological problems interconnected, but there is also an interconnection between the ecological crisis and the human crisis. The problems facing our world are a symptom of a much deeper human and spiritual crisis. We have forgotten who we are and where we come from. Nature is not something separate from ourselves or merely a setting in which we exist. I came across a short video on YouTube called "What is Integral Ecology?" Now I wish to share part of its script because it illustrates the connection and knock-on effect that social, human, and environmental issues have on one another. The text goes as follows. The insatiable demand for economic growth drives production and the market for ever cheaper consumer goods, which drives the depletion of the Earth's natural resources, and which is also a driver for cheap labor, which in turn drives poor working conditions, which drives weak environmental standards, which drives pollution, which drives greenhouse emissions, which drives climate change, which destroys livelihoods, which drives migration, which drives conflict, and so on. Everything is connected. The cry of the earth and the cry of the poor is the same cry. None of these problems facing our common home can be solved without tackling the others. Integral ecology makes clear that nature is not something separate from ourselves. We are part of it. We are in constant interaction with it. We depend on our environment for the life that we live. Through the lens of integral ecology, we no longer see creation as an object that exists to be dominated to meet our needs. Integral ecology is a way of realizing and internalizing our interconnectedness with the ecosystems that sustain us. It is a path to bringing about an attitude or a vision that no longer sees our environment, God's creation, as an object for absolute domination. So integral ecology is the opposite to the technocratic paradigm. Instead, it prioritizes human and natural flourishing over exploitation and consumption. By viewing our world through the lens of integral ecology, we will be motivated to care for each other as well as for the earth, our common home. So integral ecology is not just about the environment. It's about the way human beings live, interact, and connect with each other, with God, and with the environment in which we live and depend on. Integral ecology includes taking time to recover a serene harmony with creation, reflecting on our lifestyle and our ideals, and contemplating the Creator who lives among us and surrounds us. Integral ecology is also very much about solidarity, the common good, and if we take this principle to its logical conclusion, it is very much about the preferential option for the poor. All of these principles highlight the interconnectedness of humanity and the world we share. And these are themes that are developed very clearly and even bluntly in Fratelli Tutti. Pope Francis is highly critical of the inequalities and injustices that current economic and political structures sustain. Integral ecology also includes intergenerational justice. We are told that intergenerational solidarity is not optional, but rather a basic question of justice, since the world we have received also belongs to those who will follow us. Integral ecology is essentially a different way of seeing and understanding our world. The title to this talk refers to it as a better way to see the world. It calls on us to change, to make changes in the way we as individuals and as a society interact with our world and with each other. These changes and what is needed to make them are the topics of chapters 5 and 6 of the encyclical. I will touch on these very briefly now. Firstly, chapter 5 points out the need for dialogue, a dialogue on the environment in the international community, a dialogue which is characterized by an openness to achieving the common good. The role of the Church in this debate is to promote an honest and open debate for the common good. This idea of an open dialogue is also developed further in Fratelli Tutti. And the dialogue that Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti seek is a dialogue that goes beyond nationalism and aims for the good of all. Chapter 6 speaks about ecological education, the need to re-educate ourselves. Many things have to change course, but it is we human beings above all who need to change. Paragraph 202. Schools, families, the media and churches are urged to help reshape our habits, behavior, our lifestyles, and consumer choices. The aim of this re-education is to promote a new way of thinking about human beings, life, society, and our relationship with nature. Chapter 6 also speaks about ecological conversion. Conversion to a more passionate concern for the protection of our world that is characterized by gratitude and generosity, creativity and enthusiasm. Laudato Si proposes using these means as a way of seeing, understanding, and acting to restore a right relationship between God, our neighbour, and our common home. So, to sum up, integral ecology has been described as a holistic way of looking at our world, One writer says that is a way to zoom out, to look at the wider context in which we live. And in doing so, we come to see and appreciate that everything is connected, that environmental problems cannot be separated from human and social problems, and that the solutions to these problems demand an integrated approach that leads to both environmental and social justice. Integral ecology is a model for all levels: international, national, political, economic, and social. It is a model to bring about what the text refers to as social love, that is the key to authentic development, and which encourages a culture of care that permeates all of society. And these two are major themes taken up in Fratelli Tutti, which speaks of social friendship and brotherhood. Finally, integral ecology is also for the individual. We cannot pass the buck. And integral ecology is also made up of simple daily gestures which break the logic of violence, exploitation, and selfishness. We all have our part to play. We are each called to ecological conversion. And this is not only a mental change or a decision on our part to do certain things like recycling, avoiding waste, and so many other things. It is more about a change of heart that lets us see through the lens of integral ecology and to appreciate that everything is connected and that everybody, every organization, group, and country is part of the web of connection and has a part to play in caring for our common home.